What is that story from your school? Serious. Story 1. Attention. Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit message compose. Tor AskReddit if you have any questions or concerns. Story 2. First day of freshman. After the roll was called, one kid said his name was not called. What is your name? Hal Wirtz. For the next 4 years someone would take a test for Hal, get photographed as Hal, join clubs as Hal. No one in the admin noticed it was someone different in each photo. The only time no one stood up for him was at graduation. This happened 1972 to 1976. Story 3. At a party someone while very drunk whipped out his and masturbated on someone else's car. It very quickly became the go-to retort whenever he tried giving someone else, "You jizzed on a car." Story 4. School trip to China. On the day of return, a 16-year-old girl from my grade stole a pair of sunglasses from the airport and got caught by airport security. She stayed behind while everyone went home. Her parents had to fly to China from halfway across the world to bail her out. Made the news. Story 5. Student my freshman year of high school had a mental breakdown. The health teacher failed him. Rumor was he got beat at home for it, and so he took it out on the teacher. He started screaming in the middle of class. Teacher sent him to the hall, and when she opened the door to check on him he had constructed a homemade blowtorch with hairspray and a lighter to try and catch her in fire. When she opened the door all you see was flames. He was shortly expelled afterwards and the teacher took a few months off work. Don't know whatever happened to the kid. Story 6. Our biology teacher was everyone's favorite teacher, and so one year everyone decided to prank him by leaving pennies everywhere he would go and no one would acknowledge it to make him think he was crazy. It started out with people leaving pennies here or there in his classroom, but as time went on it kept getting more and more extreme. Students started leaving cups of pennies on his desk and his jackets. When he had speeches in the auditorium people printed pictures of pennies and snuck them into the papers he was reading from, and finally, they print large pictures of pennies and snuck them into his classroom, and put them on his walls. Story 7. Morning news show crew had their camera accidentally go live and broadcast to the entire school a student sucking a Pop-Tart in a suggestive manner and another flipping off the camera. Folks, if you're in front of a camera, always assume it is on. Story 8. Back in the 90s, a kid came out to a few friends and as the old saying goes, those friends told a few of their friends, who told a few of their friends and so on. Within 2 weeks there was a petition to have him removed from the school and the other 3 high schools in town had petitions passed around to prevent him from transferring. Instead of doing something about it, most teachers and administrators signed the petition as well and looked away when he was being harassed. He had to walk around with a friend group everywhere so he wasn't jumped and couldn't even use the toilet. He had to go down the street to the gas station instead. He even almost failed gym because he couldn't be in the locker room with the other boys without a beating. He ended up dropping out midway through his senior year and leaving town. Edit. I should add, the local paper got wind of it and tried to do a story on discrimination and gay rights, but that only escalated the situation, which was the eventual cause of him leaving town. Story 9. It's a good story but unfortunately never gained much popularity. My form tutor had a cane, was really nice, everyone liked him. One day he apparently tripped over that cane in the middle of a lesson. He wasn't very hurt but the school still called his wife to inform her of what happened. It apparently went something like this: "Hello Mrs. We just wanted to inform you that your husband has fallen over at work." "Oh gosh, is he okay?" "Yes, he's fine, he just tripped over his cane, he doesn't have a cane." So yeah, my form tutor had a cane and was faking his disability. After this came out, some students claimed to have seen him actually running in the local park on Saturdays, and many people had noticed that sometimes he wouldn't actually put his cane on the ground. He would just move it back and forth but never actually make contact with the ground. Story 10. Mormon jock white kids grabbed a Mexican girls. At that time there was a gang called WBP Wetback Power, which was a rather large gang consisted of Mexican Americans or immigrant kids. What started as a huge brawl turned into a campus riot and students were throwing soda cans at teachers and destroying everything they could. Riot squad was called and whole block had to be closed off, shut down. Story 11. This girl came to school embarrassingly drunk, staggering through the halls until a teacher tracked her down and carried her to the nurse's office. She was one of the conservative, quiet, mousy girls. That day she showed up, hair teased to the max, skimpy blouse and the shortest skirt I've ever seen at the time. She was the topic of every conversation all day, and it was weeks before she resurfaced again, converting back to her quiet, mousy self. Story 12. A few years after I graduated 99, the assistant softball coach got caught having with one of the student softball players. Then it came out that over the years he had had with over a dozen of the students' players. Dude was not conventionally attractive at all, and the girls he had with were all super popular, super gorgeous. Turned out that the reason none of them came forward until he got caught was they all thought they were the only one, that they were special, and when they found out that they weren't special to him, they were pissed. Many of them were minors when they had, so he was charged, served time, and is now a registered SO. His wife, who is gorgeous, divorced him. Two of his victims that graduated in '98 were best friends during his crimes and were still friends when he got caught. Story 13. One of our custodians had with a teacher, his wife who was also a custodian, kicked him out of the house. A month later one of the coaches unexpectedly went into a locker room after hours and discovered he'd been living at the school undetected. He was fired. Story 14. Kid brought a gun to my high school and fired it off in a classroom during lunch. We had an open campus and one of the teachers pulled the fire alarm thinking that would get the kids out faster. Unfortunately, we are supposed to go out to the field if the alarm goes off. That's the meeting spot. Only problem was that it was right underneath the third floor classroom this kid was in. So we all get outside and teachers are running across the yard yelling at us to keep going to the hospital next door, which is super random. Freeway had to get shut down because it ran right next to the classroom as well. The kid eventually let his 3 hostages go and fired at police in an attempt at police-assisted suicide. He got shot and ended up with brain damage but actually lived. Story 15. A girl got pregnant and didn't tell anyone. Nobody noticed the whole time she was pregnant, and she finally gave birth in the school bathroom to a stillborn. She hid the body in her locker, and the body was found one day by the janitor who noticed a weird smell coming from the locker. The poor soul ended up in an institution. Her dad was actually a good friend of my dad, and I remember how devastated he was for years after. A tragic story. Story 16. I grew up in rural Oklahoma in the 80s. 2 of my teachers married barely former students. The biggest event I can remember in my day was that one of the 8th graders, I was a senior when this happened. It was a K-12 school, started dating a guy who graduated 5 years before I did, so she was 14 and he was 21 to 22. This was extremely common and the town was so poor that it was encouraged because he was seen as a contributing breadwinner, and all these girls were just going to become wives' mothers when they graduate. Anyway, 90 did. She took him home and he met her 28-year-old mother and he dropped the middle schooler like a hot brick. I was privy to all of this because 1, it was a very small town, and 2, my parents owned the local grocery store and everyone told their business there. So fast forward to the Halloween dance. The community was welcome, so there are adults there as well as high school kids. This was a dumb idea for obvious drug and alcohol reasons. Boyfriend shows up at the dance with 8th grader. I am DJing. My mixtape was a thing of Beauty, White Snake and Discerned into George Strait magic. Mama comes into the gym and grabs 8th grader by the hair and they roll around on the dance floor gouging and dropping GS and screaming their love for Richie. You your hands off my man. And you don't even know how pecker yet, type smack talk. Principal and coach drag them outside and half the crowd stays to dance to my Elton John Denver mix and the other half stands in the gym parking lot watching 2 attractive blondes fight over a man with a concave chest, pube mustache, and a part-time job sweeping and emptying trash at his uncle's laundromat. Story 17. 84 students were arrested or apprehended for meth in one day. A girl, their dealer, gave cops the information of all of her customers. She kept records and agreed to go to rehab instead of going to prison. Story 18. Phys ed teacher M, late 20s, was discovered to have a relationship with a senior 18F, who also happened to be the daughter of the high school principal. Phys ed teacher's wife also worked at the school, and when it came out, she threw him out. He still needed his job, so he moves into a camper which was parked at the school, and stays there the remaining 6 months or so. He then follows her to college, and gets a job in that town. I haven't heard anything in the last couple years, but they were together last I heard. Story 19. A guy got stabbed in the back. The attacker fled. He pulled the knife out of his back himself and then chased after his attacker like the freaking Hulk. Story 20. Oh, I have lots. The most memorable one was the student who set off a ton of cherry bombs in the bottom floor toilets to get the staff to come running to the scene, then setting off tear gas once they got there. No one knew why he did it. Story 21. The band teacher's son, who was in my sophomore class, was murdered by a hunting rifle in a field while walking home from school. The murder went unsolved for 20 years. They think it was 2 older boys, but they both killed themselves in the 1990s. Really sad, especially because the murderer's younger brother was a good friend of the murdered kid. The younger brother was part of a group of friends that visited with the murdered boy's parents every Friday afternoon after he was killed. They did this for years, until they went away to college, etc. Story 22. In 2000, a few years after ID graduated, a local radio station ran an online contest that allowed people to vote for the school that would get a concert from Mandy Moore. Since this was back in the early days of the internet, they had no controls to track or limit voting. Kids from my school, an elite STEM magnet program, wrote a couple of scripts that generated tens of thousands of votes for our school. After seeing that, another school tried to do the same thing, but our bots were better. The station tried to say it would not count script votes and would disqualify anyone found using them, but it seems that the voting was so corrupted that there was no real way to figure what votes were real. We ultimately won the contest by a huge margin, and Mandy Moore came to perform. The real prize was winning the contest in the first place. No one showed up to the actual concert. Story 23. HS girls basketball coach groomed and raped probably over 100 girls during his tenure. He was finally caught when a star potential D1 girl wound up prego. No charges, just fired and retired. Story 24. A guy and his friends went to McDonald's to hang out in the parking lot, and he made what they all called a sock and then beat each other with it. Yes, he pooped in a sock, and also I think I should mention they were seniors. Story 25. Our ICT teacher killed himself after his wife, who was a teaching assistant at our school, cheated on him. His son found him after head slit his wrists with a Stanley knife. He was a great teacher. The wife was not greeted well by the students and shortly resigned. Story 26 story that did happen back in the 80s. Cop came to my high school to talk to us kids about the dangers of drugs. With him he brought a locked briefcase with what the drugs looked like, a small sample of everything in blister packs. During his second day while on lunch with the case locked up in his squad car in the trunk. He returned to his squad car to find the trunk of the squad car pried and busted open. And drugs gone. He was supposed to come back for a third and final day, but never did. Story 27 in 8th grade my friend and I got hot sauce banned from our school district because we decided to get 2 bottles of habanero sauce and chug them at lunch to prove our manliness, only to both leave school early and my friend go to get his stomach pumped in a hospital, while I spent a week on the couch in pain with my parents informing me how stupid my life choices are. Story 28 my junior year, a popular girl was running in PE and suddenly dropped stone dead on the track. 1 second running, next second gone, all kinds of spooky rumors, that reading her diary sounded like she knew it would happen, sprung up around the event. Story 29 we had a gym teacher, Mr. Dice. His nickname was Mr. DIY. Well, during a class outing to the ski hill, he was teaching students how to stop by using ski poles. During the demonstration, he accidentally ran into the end of the pole really hard and one of his testicles exploded. Hence, he went from Mr. Dice to Mr. Die. Which is also probably what he wanted to do at that exact moment. Story 30 Catholic high school in the United States. Students ages 13-ish to 18-ish. The vice principal, who was in charge of student disciple, was also the athletic director and the head football American style coach, and had played professional football himself many years earlier. As with many Catholic schools in America, the football team was very good and was a very big deal in the school culture. 3 of the vice principal's athletic director football coach's children, including his only daughter, were students at the same time I was a student. The star football player for the team knocked up the daughter of the vice principal's athletic director football coach. The nuns who actually ran the school were Nun C. See what I did there to happy with the situation. Story 31 English teacher was taking in panty shots of girls, ended up having a whole folder on his computer of those pics, never got arrested, but definitely got fired. Story 32 I went to a boarding school several decades ago, my senior year. Someone built an improvised explosive device out of 3 tanks of propane and hid it near the entrance of one of the dorms. This type of bomb is very dangerous and apparently whoever built it knew what they were doing. To the school's credit, they did an excellent job dealing with this. They evacuated the kids from the dorm without telling them what had happened and kept people away without setting off panic. The local bomb squad was quietly called and the bomb was safely rendered harmless. After it was over, the head of the school told everyone what had happened. No one was hurt and the incident was quickly forgotten. Still, it's a crazy story. Story 33 in junior high a student was raped and murdered by a family friend or her stepfather or something like that. There's a little memorial still in front of the school. Story 34 freshman year 2016 to 2017 a sophomore student incapacitated the boys' locker room after he was swinging on the pipes running overhead. One of the pipes broke under his weight, causing sewage to spill all over the room. Sophomore year 2017 to 2018 a couple of students were suspended after they had smeared their fecal matter all over the walls in the boys' restroom in the junior wing. This was in retaliation to the vice principal confiscating their Juul vape pens. Junior year 2018 to 2019 a senior from the special education wing was arrested and sentenced to 8 years in prison for 2 accounts of arson. The student had set fire to both the boys' and girls' restrooms in the junior wing, causing $53,000 in damage. This is the same student that broke the overhead sewage pipe back in freshman year. Senior year 2019 to 2020 a senior student had witnessed the geometry teacher having with the geography teacher in the empty classroom between them. It has remained a secret amongst the students and the teachers as both teachers were really cool and we did not want to see them lose their jobs. Story 35 just before my very first semester of high school, the beloved principal got randomly removed in what can only be described as a U from the education board. What ensued was a full-on, school-wide protest movement demanding for the principal to be reinstated. Had its own slogans. Cars were driving by with people hanging out the windows with signs. The whole 9 yards. Then one fateful day, while I was in the middle of lunch, everyone just stood up and started cheering and hollering. I didn't know what was going on, so I walked over to someone who was straight up crying from happiness and asked her what was going on. Turns out, the news had come out saying that the principal was, indeed, coming back. I didn't have a phone at the time, so I wasn't able to get the news when everyone else did. A few days later, the principal was back and all was good again, until COVID hit. Then my high school experience tanked and never again reached the heights that it did that first semester. Story 36 my daughter's guidance counselor was arrested for selling drugs. She was a horrible GC. I was considering changing to the other GC, then I didn't have to. She told any student not going into STEM that they would never get a job. I get being realistic with kids, but she was militant and overly aggressive about it. And my daughter got a job right out of college in her field. Story 37 first one. Super beloved social studies teacher got caught raping and exchanging messages with a 16-year-old girl. Second one, it was your average day in school, and they randomly called for a lockdown. They didn't announce it was a drill, like usual, so we were all confused. They lifted it like 20 to 30 minutes later, and they said that a dog was on the loose outside. Made no sense. Word got around by 6th period that police were on the ground searching for a bomb. Apparently someone found out that a guy broke into the school the night before, and there was footage of him wandering the halls and taking photos, so the school thought it was some psycho plotting something. Turns out the dude just graduated from there and thought it was appropriate to give himself a tour of the school after hours. Story 38. The sewage system overclogged, so all the bathrooms got flooded with black water that ended up going into the halls. We were off school for 3 days because the faucet water got dirty as well. Story 39. When I was a freshman in high school, I was on the JV football team and we had a physical trainer who everyone hated. Our football team won our last game of the season, and it was only our second win of the year. Naturally, we were celebrating pretty loudly in the locker room that night. Out of nowhere, the athletic trainer burst into the locker room and cussed us out, seemingly just for being joyous about the win. The next morning, I'm walking around the hallways of the school, and I notice a bunch of people with printed pictures of his face taped to their shirts. Turns out, right about the time he came in the locker to yell at us, he found out that he'd been caught for soliciting from a minor over the internet. Everyone hated this man to the extent that the next day they printed off his mugshot and walked around the school with it taped to their t-shirt. Story 40. I went to a continuation high school, so you would think I have a lot, but I don't. Most kids there just got caught with weed or fell behind in school, some being kicked out for grades for completely stupid reasons, like being stuck in a hospital with a serious illness and being in and out of a coma, thus unable to do her work. But everyone I graduated from there with remembers one particular guy. Let's call him Johnny. Johnny was a partier. Like most from the school, there was a big party in the forested park by the creek. I did not attend, since I didn't enjoy parties, but most of my close friends did. The next day, everyone seemed on edge with Johnny, especially a mutual friend of my group's. Let's call him Duke. While we were in math, I was sitting nearby Duke and Johnny. Duke sat directly behind Johnny. I could see Duke was antsy, and he kept standing up and sitting down. This behavior wasn't unusual for a lot of kids in alternative ed, but there was something particularly aggressive about Duke. Suddenly, Duke attacked Johnny from behind and began brutally beating him down until the math teacher dragged them apart. Duke only got suspended, but we never saw Johnny again. Turns out multiple people had watched Johnny and rape another student from our school, and was also drunkenly admitting that he consistently molested his young sister, saying she liked it. I'm hoping that wherever Johnny is, he's dead and suffering or locked away for life. I eventually was updated by the friend I was close to who was best friends with Duke, but only learned for sure that Johnny was sent to trial for both of the rapes. Story 41. We were put on lockdown for 2-ish hours and the teachers were just advised to keep teaching. Everyone was confused. Come to find out, some girl met this guy on the internet and he flew from Vegas to try and kidnap her. He found her in the parking lot. She came in for half days because she had college classes in the morning, and he chased her in the building until another student stopped him from actually entering the building. He's still in prison for attempted kidnapping. Story 42. This is very recent, about maybe 4 to 5 years ago now, but we had this really awesome English teacher. She was kind-hearted, super accepting, and everyone she taught always said that she was the best teacher they'd ever had. I mean, this woman even had the dropkicks doing better than they did in other classes. A student in one of her classes came out as trans and switched pronouns to Hethy. This was the first time many of us, teachers included, had heard of they pronouns, and we didn't entirely understand it, but the majority were relatively accepting. This teacher in question was, of course, accommodating as well, however unfortunately forgot a couple times and referred to them as a she. Both times she apologized. But on the second time, the student said that was unforgivable, that she was doing it on purpose, and ended up reporting the teacher. It was absolute chaos. Parents were involved. There were many conversations, and the teacher was put on leave for 2 weeks until the situation was sorted. Some of the students' friends went as far as sending hate emails, posting negative things about her across social media, etc. In the end, it was recognized that the teacher had made a genuine error with no intent to offend, and the situation was considered resolved. Except that was it for the teacher. At the end of the school year, she decided this would be her last teaching job, as that was one of the most stressful moments of her teaching career, and she didn't want to be put through that again. I don't know where she is now, but she was truly one of the best teachers we'd ever had, and it was devastating to see an instant of student bullying tear her apart like this. Story 43. When I was in 9th grade, the kids started to get bored. I went to an all-boys school where hormones were raging and everyone was an attention seeker. There was an art teacher at my school, kind, supportive, everything a teacher should be. While I wasn't into art, I always tried my best in her class as I genuinely liked her. This one kid, the cliché rich, daddy's money kind of kid, thought it would be funny to edit her Wikipedia, as she was a relatively well-known sculptor. This was at the time where things didn't need to be approved on Wikipedia, and he edited it to say some pretty shitty stuff, like making fun of her being lesbian, calling her slurs, and just other homophobic racist things. Everyone saw it, and for a while he got away punishment-free. Being the little snitch I was, I bribed someone in my grade to tell the head of our school about it. The kid got called to the office and a lot of other stuff came out about him, like how he would call black kids the N-word, he was white, and how he brought a knife to school and threatened to stab the autistic kid. What's worse is that he got no punishment because his dad would donate $150K a year to the school and threatened to stop if he got punished. While this might not be that bad, it was one of the biggest scandals at my school. Story 44. Okay, so this is a weird one. So this was out primary school that I don't go to anymore because I'm too old now obviously, but there was this pedo and he kept touching the girls inappropriately. This was a teacher's husband. The girls told our principal. He did nothing about it, nothing, didn't tell the parents, didn't report him. 15 years later the girls reported both of them. They got in a lot of trouble, don't know exactly what happened. This happened in a school in Northern Ireland. Story 45. The first day of I think my 7th grade year there was a bomb threat. The superintendent made the executive choice to do absolutely nothing and sent us all anyways. Thank God nothing actually happened. A few years down the line the entire elementary school has to evacuate due to another bomb threat. I'm not sure why they took this one so seriously, but they spent most of the day at another school until they realized the threat was meant for another school. Don't ask me how. If I remember correctly there was a shooter threat during finals which they also did nothing about, but it was right after a major school shooting had happened so we were all pretty freaked out. Several teachers also slept with students but that's less interesting. Story 46. A football player's heart stopped on the field, but his life was saved because an AED was readily available, leading to a change in the law requiring them to be present at every game. Story 47. Decades ago, a very young male teacher was observed having with a current student at a fairly wild weekend party. At school, the following Monday he showed up wearing shorts with betadine disinfectant on his carpet burns. From then on he was called Party Knees. He left the school pretty soon afterwards. Story 48. My old wrestling coach had a relationship with my at the time 15 years old classmate. They were found out when her mother found love letters from him to her. To think I used to wrestle him during practice when he was touching girls in the grade above me makes me sick. Story 49. During recess in elementary school there was a kid that climbed up to the top of a snowbank that other kids were playing on, dropped his pants, and started peeing all over the other kids climbing the snowbank. It was pure chaos. Story 50. In high school, our married English teacher had an affair with a married lesbian biology teacher whose wife was also the math teacher. The English teacher's kids all went to the school. It was beyond messy and complicated even further by the math teacher, who refused to leave her position. Good for her. Also I had dated the English teacher's daughter before all this happened. He really was the nicest guy, or so I thought. Story 51. The neighboring high school had 3 suicides in a matter of 2 weeks. Same town where 4 years later Chris Watts murdered his family and dumped them at a wellhead site. And next to the town where a house exploded due to a natural gas pipeline leak. And next to the town where an oil well exploded and killed a man. Colorado never seems to be short of tragedy, and I never can find out why. Story 52. A kid from my school is the reason cameras were installed in taxis in my city. She and her boyfriend stabbed a taxi driver in the neck. The girl in question was also slightly notorious for being the only girl to get pregnant while a student there won the 5 years our grade were there. Story 53. We had 3 people, a teacher, an administrator, and a student, all dropped dead of a heart attack within the course of a month, maybe slightly longer. It has been a while. Story 54. This in our school who was my and a few other people's bullies until I eventually fought back was picking on this other guy. The bully was white and the victim was black. One day in gym class we were playing basketball and the two of them started arguing over something which eventually led to the bully trying to attack this kid. The victim punched him straight in the face in self-defense and broke his nose, but the victim was the only one who suffered any consequences. He was expelled, while the other dude never faced in punishment or ever showed any remorse. Story 55. There was one pretty infamous incident at our school where some boys on a school trip urinated and defecated on a classmate, recorded it on video and then passed it around. Needless to say they were expelled. Story 56. Not my high school but my best friend's high school in the same city. There was this immigrant student who came from somewhere in Africa when he was younger. He was somewhat of an outcast in high school and only had one close friend that he stuck with. When he was 8, his mom raped him. Left him super traumatized and caused a lot of issues for him, but he was apparently a nice but kind of weird kid in high school. He confided in his best friend about this, and his best friend ended up telling everyone in the school. Soon enough he was labeled mom and was tormented relentlessly. He ended up dropping out of school and killing himself. Story 57. A classmate's nudes leaked and almost everyone had them. She was 12 and she had an 18 years old such a pedo. This shared her nudes with her pedo friends and then one of them leaked the nudes to almost everyone in school almost at the end of the course. She was the typical mean girl of the class, but no one deserves that. Also, I had the opportunity to know her better after the incident and I discovered she was not that bad and I actually liked her a bit. And as he was in his last year, ran out to join the military and disappear. Actually no one paid for these, but at least, she overcame it kinda well. I think she is not as traumatized as anyone can think. Story 58. The chorus teacher had a relationship with, and ended up marrying one of his students. He was pretty young, I think fresh out of college, and she was a senior, according to the rumors. Another music teacher walked in on them making out in his office, which was in the back of the other teacher's office, so not exactly private. He told the chorus teacher, either you tell the principal or I do, so they came clean to the principal and her dad, the assistant pastor at one of the bigger churches in town. I can't remember if he taught for another year after that, but he definitely finished out the school year and later married her. From what I've seen, they're still together over 10 years later and he is still teaching. It's always been a weird situation to me. They were very close in age so their relationship would probably have made sense outside of that environment, but at the same time, I know my family would have been livid that a teacher would abuse his power like that, regardless of his age. Story 59. A student disappeared out of nowhere. His elder brother was in the same grade as me, and the news spread like fire in the entire school. Family, friends, classmates all were shook. Police was involved looking for the student. Over a few days, when people started to speculate he probably passed away, we all hear that he's actually been kidnapped. At that point it was all over news as well. There were so many interviews with his friends, the brother. His dad, one of his best friends, stood out the most. He was hysteric at his disappearance. Turned out the same friend contrived a plan with his non-school older friends to kidnap him for money, but accidentally murdered him because the kid kept fighting his might to escape. The murder happened the same night he disappeared, but the kidnapper's murderers decided to continue with the original plan and contacted his parents thinking they'd still get their hands on some money. It was extremely horrifying. This happened good 12 years ago, but I often still wonder about the family. What a tragedy to go through. Seeing his brother in school after that was also painful. He was strong though, at least seemed like it. Edit made a clarification edit. Story 60. My high school esports team had a really rough history. Hey, race a list of what happened that I know about. Rumor has it that the former sponsor of the club was fired for something bad, which put the club into a really bad standing with the rest of the school. I would have been a 7th grader at the time, and heard about this from a sophomore friend who was on the team all 4 years. The following year, our team actually won a tournament, which gave the school some equipment which was promised to go towards the club, stuff like gaming laptops for the team to use at school. The school had also promised to pay for club members' HSEL passes using some of the One Grant money. Instead, the equipment was sold to help redo the cafeteria, and students still had to pay for HSEL passes. However, my friend told me that club members just said that they couldn't afford the pass to make the school foot the bill in rebellion. The year I joined, the team I joined couldn't compete officially since most of the members were busy. We had some of the graduated seniors fill in, but they weren't allowed to go to events. A month later, there was a school-wide scandal about a bunch of club members harassing a girl on the official esports server for our school and also fetishizing Indians. Our school had a significant Indian population, so this was a big deal. Literally the following week, our club sponsor was fired for soliciting from a couple of juniors. Nobody else wanted to sponsor the club after that, so it was forced to disband.